In this video, we're going to talk about how to prepare and set up MDS to generate the information needed to register your apartments with DHCR. Hi, I'm Cindy from MDS. If you've reached this point, you're ready to get started on your rent registration. In this segment, I'll walk you through exactly what you need to prepare and to set up an MDS for processing your rent registration. The first thing you need to do when preparing MDS for rent registration is to complete the rent registration global setup. To do so in MDS, go to the main menu bar and click Annual Task, DHCR Annual Rent Registration Setup, Global Setup to open the DHCR Annual Apartment Registration window. If you've completed your registration in earlier years using MDS, you may have most, if not all, the necessary information filled out in this window, as the information is stored from year to year once saved. The global setup tells the system what information to gather and analyze for each apartment's registration. The preferences entered here applies to all the properties in your portfolio. So we'll walk through each field to get familiar. First is the apartment registration year to enter the year you're registering your apartments. The current year is filled out by default, but you can change to a previous year. Next, to the type of name address to print in the file. You can select either the combination of the building's company name along with the management office address or the management company name and the address. The DHCR provider code is an identifying code given to you by DHCR and is required in MDS to create the electronic registration file for uploading. The following sections we'll talk about in the global setup will use three types of codes in MDS to identify the relevant information to include in each apartment's registration. We'll use status codes, equipment codes, and charge codes. Typically, these codes already exist in your database, as most of them are codes you need to set up for day-to-day stuff like printing lease renewals, but you do have the opportunity to create these codes if you find they're missing and needed for your registration. With that said, let's talk about these sections. First, we have the section to indicate how stabilized and rent-controlled apartments should be identified in the registration file. If your entire portfolio is of stabilized units, select All Units Are Stabilized. Otherwise, enter the status code that represents your stabilized units and/or your rent control. You may choose to enable the option to exclude apartments by status code within your system preferences. Next is the equipment section. If you use the equipment file function in MDS to track appliances or equipment installed in an apartment, you can map the appropriate code for any of the 6 possible appliances or equipment that contributed to a rent increase. The permanently exempt since last registration is for mapping the status code that indicates apartments that are exempt from being registered for the first time. When you assign a status code for permanently exempt since last registration, the other possible reasons for first-time permanent exemption become available to map. If a unit is flagged as first-time exempt and this is their exit registration, the unit must have another status code assigned indicating why. The following section is for mapping status codes for apartments that are temporarily exempt from this year's registration for one of the 4 reasons listed. The miscellaneous section is where you map a status code for apartments that are permanently exempt after their first year of exemption so the system can globally convert them from first-time exemptions to permanent when you run a utility. If you've used MDS before for your registration, we recommend running this utility before you create your next registration file. This section is also where you map status codes for a succession of an apartment and a status code representing a not-for-profit homeless unit along with its service provider name. The last section is for mapping charges used in the calculation of rent. Most often there's nothing to do here as your charge codes are normally already set up the way that they should for your day-to-day property management tasks, but you can create anything that you may be missing. Once you're done, you can click OK to save and close your window to move on to the next step. Note this global setup window will pop up a few more times as you go through the process of generating your registration file. Think of it as a way the system is asking the safety net question, is it still good with you? After all, it is the basis of getting the accurate data for your rent registration. Next, I'll walk you through prepping your building information for registration. The purpose of this step is to configure the building information, especially the physical address, to match exactly what is registered with DHCR for a seamless upload. Historically, mismatched addresses, specifically wrong formatting, have been the source of errors when uploading registration files to Arrow. Before we start, take a look at the building search tool provided by the DHCR. Here you can search for your buildings to view exactly what address DHCR has on file. Let's continue to the building setup. To do so, go to the main menu bar and click Annual Tasks, DHCR Annual Rent Registration Setup, Building Setup to open the DHCR Annual Apartment Registration Summary window. Enter or select a building number. The building will populate with information from the building information screen and any information you've already populated. Review the data, keeping in mind the following. If this is your first time using MDS to register a building or buildings, the address must be reformatted to match DHCR's records. To edit, click Edit. Carefully modify the information for each of your buildings. You can copy the contact information to other buildings to avoid typing it in repeatedly. Once done, click Finish. We've completed our setups and we're almost to the end. Before I take you through how to create the MDS file for your registration, I'll show you how you can get a sneak peek of the key data that will be included in this specially formatted file. To do so, we will take a look at the listing report, a report designed to mimic the one you can generate in Arrow. To generate this report, go to the main menu bar, click Annual Tasks, DHCR Annual Rent Registration, Generate Rent Registration Listing Report to open the Report Generator window. What you see is not much different from generating any other type of report in MDS. You'll select your desired output, your desired building or buildings, and click Run Report. When you do, you'll see the global setup pop up again. Again, this is a way to confirm that the global setup is correct. Click OK to proceed. The listing report will hold some key information you can review before uploading, such as how many of each registration types there are in a building, the registration status for each unit, and the April legal rent being captured. If the registration status or count is incorrect, you may need to review the status code assigned to the unit. If the legal rent is incorrect, you may need to make a gross potential adjustment. Contact the MDS support team if you need assistance with making a gross potential adjustment. Once you're confident in the data, you can now move on to creating your rent registration file for upload. We're now at our final step, creating the file to upload to Arrow. To do so, go to the main menu bar and click Annual Tasks, DHCR Rent Registration, Create File to upload to DHCR. The global setup will open once again for confirmation. Click OK if there are no changes. Select the building or buildings you'd like to register for. Some may feel more comfortable with batches of building in a file. It's totally your preference. Click OK and the system will begin processing and creating the file. Once complete, you may see on one of two results. If you're using MDS Explorer Remote Edition, you'll receive a prompt to enter an email address to have the file emailed to you. If you're running on MDS Explorer Enterprise, you'll receive a file creation succeeded prompt telling you where the file is located. Either way, however you access the file, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is to log onto the Arrow application and upload the file. If you encounter errors uploading the file, you can contact the support team. Once uploaded, if you require further assistance with your registration, please contact DHCR for assistance. That's all for now. All the best, and let us know how MDS can help you. Thank you.